Hey Genderqueer Chat, Joe here. I'm finally at home. Micah, that's for you, but I don't know if Stanley's gonna show up. We'll see. Yeah, lately I've been making videos in my car. I think because I'm waiting too long to make them, and then I'm waiting till Friday afternoon and stuff like that. But it's actually Wednesday night here while I make this video. I just woke up from a very long nap. I had dental work yesterday, and all I've been doing is sleeping. I'm also doing my coupons. Do you know I'm an extreme couponer? Yes, I think you do. So I'm just sitting at my desk doing that, and I thought, okay, now's a good time to do this. So this week's topic was a viewer's choice. A viewer had written in and said that they were interested in knowing about jobs. So what do you wear to an interview? What places are genderqueer accepting? Where do you work and are they accepting? And any tips for anyone? Okay, so what to wear to an interview? That actually totally depends on what the job is and how comfortable you are being yourself, I guess is the question. I once, years and years ago, when I was 19 years old, I applied for a job at the Legislative Library of Ontario, which is a government library, like the big one, the Legislative Library. And it was for a summer student clerk position. And I remember I wore these cotton pants with these little, it was the 90s. They had suspenders built into it and just a plain white shirt. And I remember I got the job, and later some of my colleagues told me that one of the reasons they hired me was because I was dressed so casually. They knew I would fit in, because some of the people apparently coming for that interview were wearing Armani suits and stuff like that, and they were not looking for someone, you know, who was formal, because it was a very informal work environment, and I just happened to catch that on the right day, I guess, because I am a casual person. There's a running joke with my sister. I always say if I can't wear jeans and I think it was cash under the table, jeans, and air conditioning are my only requirements for employment. But cash under the table, it was back when I was, you know, younger and stupider. But yeah, if I can't wear jeans on the job, I don't want the job. Full stop. The interview, I typically don't wear jeans to, but I've always dressed quite casually at job interviews. Most recently, when I was in Savannah, Georgia, was it Savannah? I saw this black guy walking down the street, and he looked so good. I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten it. He was wearing tweed pants, like brownish tweedy pants, and an orange, like a rust orange shirt. And it was just such a good, like a collared shirt. And he just looked really pressed and really well put together. And I thought, that's my outfit. So I bought a pair of brown tweedy pants and a rust orange collared shirt. And my sister always calls that my outfit. You know, your outfit. I can wear it to weddings. I can wear it to job interviews. They're nice dress pants. I mean, I'm not a dress pants type of person, but yeah, I'm not wearing a dress to an interview. Well, let's put it that way. So yeah, it really does depend on the job, and it depends on whether or not you want to present yourself as someone who prefers to be casual or prefers to be formal. And if the problem is in this economy, you know, sometimes you just want the job, you want it so desperately, you're going to do whatever you need to do to get that job. And I get that too. I personally cannot be formal. There's not a formal bone in my body, and I don't even own formal clothing, quite frankly. So I don't think I own a suit jacket. No, I don't. So I have to be myself, and that's just my preference, and I've been lucky that way. Okay, so what places are genderqueer accepting? On my 30th birthday, and as you might know, I'm 39 now. On my 30th birthday, I made a list of all the jobs I'd had in my life, and it came to 40. So I've worked everywhere. In other words, I've gone through so many job interviews, you have no idea. And up to a certain point, up until maybe like the last 10 years, which was maybe 29 to 30, every job I ever applied for, I got. And I think that's because oftentimes I think what employers are looking for is just who you are. And I'm a very frank and honest person. I'm very, very easy to talk to. What you see is what you get with me. And that tends to fly quite well in interviews. I interview very well. But that is not to say that's what every employer wants. Some people want, you know, like I've never applied for a job that requires, you know, extreme, like Cole just mentioned in the video about Abercrombie and Finch requires certain people to look a certain way. I know was it in Canada or was it in the US? It was a big stink somewhat recently. A woman with no arm, she had an amputated arm, was put in the back room at Abercrombie and Finch and then eventually fired because she was not the look they were looking for, and she sued. And that wouldn't fly in Canada. Actually, I don't think that would fly in Canada at all. We have like extreme anti-discrimination laws. But yeah, I could never apply for a job that wanted me to look a certain way. And my sister works in in big banking. She actually works for a company that, it's called the wealth management division of a bank. So you have to have $1 million to walk in the door of their department. And her colleague is a French-Canadian woman. And I don't know if you know anything about French-Canadian fashion, but it's extremely different than the rest of Canada. It's very, very haute couture, whatever that word is. Her colleague dresses to the nines every day. My sister actually does dress to the nines every day. But her colleague wears spike heels, spike pointy-toed heels, and, you know, ladies' business suits and extremely gendered outfits. Now, interestingly, she's never been promoted. That particular colleague of my sister has never been promoted. And my sister and I were talking about why. And I suspect, it's my personal opinion, is that she's too girly. The problem in business, at least in my experience, is the more gender neutral you are, the more likely you are to succeed as a woman. The deeper your voice, for example, because this particular colleague of my sister talks like a baby. And I always say, well, I think that really goes against her. And I think men don't take women seriously in the workplace who really hypersexualize their femininity. That's my opinion. You don't see too many people in high business dressed like that. So I would say gender neutral is probably the better way to go. Now, the next question is, where do you work and are they accepting? And this kind of ties in because I work for a school board. And a school board is probably the best place you could ever work if you're genderqueer, or a university or something like that. Education typically is very tolerant of diversity. And one of the things, because I work in the elementary, like the public school system, elementary and high schools, and they have, a predominantly female workforce. So most of the employees are women teachers, right? And think of your own grade 8 teacher or whatever. She was probably a bit of a character. I mean, we all had a teacher who was a bit of a character, who wore kind of quirky outfits or, those capri pants or sandals. It's very casual. It's extremely casual. A lot of people wear jeans to work. My department in computer services, we wear exclusively jeans. I don't think any of us ever dress nicely. We're always dressed like bums. This is what I wore to work today, for example. It's a gray sweater with a little thing built in and a pair of jeans. So that's what I wore to work today. And I go school to school, and I have a name tag that I usually often see it in my videos to let people know that I am a board employee. I will frequently wear, we were told actually, and my boss told us we are supposed to wear a collared shirt and closed-toed shoes. That was the dress code where I work, and he actually said if it's good enough for the golf course, it's good enough for work, which is an extremely sexist thing to say if you ask me, because I've never been golfing. And anyway, apparently that means a collared shirt, and that's very male-oriented, because most women don't wear collared shirts. This is not collared, actually, so I'm breaking the dress code today. But I did attempt to take a stab at it for a long time, and I still do. I have a lot of collared shirts in my wardrobe, and I wear usually a tank top underneath. Usually like men's collared shirt and a pair of jeans. It's pretty low brow, like there's nothing much to it. Interestingly, on the topic of my boss, who's we had a long talk about sexism in the workplace yesterday, and I kind of came out to my boss. I didn't use the word genderqueer, but I did say that, on the gender binary spectrum, I'm in the gray area. I said that. I used those words because we were talking about sexism in the workplace, and he was saying when he was promoted fair and square. And I said, well, let's be fair, you play golf with the boss. I said, do you ever think in a million years I would ever be invited to go play golf with you and the boss and be groomed for management? And he said flat out no. And I said, I know. You and I both know that I'm not being groomed for management. And he said, well, to be fair, I pushed my way in and I wanted it. It was just an interesting conversation. I like the fact that I can be honest with my boss. So I've been at that place since, I got hired by the board in 2000, and then I got fired. I used to work in libraries. I used to work in the library portion of the Board of Ed. And then I went back to college, got my computer science diploma, and was still on the casual list. Because it's a union job, they never technically fire anybody, but I was not aware of that. So I was still on the list, and I was hired back as a computer technician, as a library technician for a little while, and then eased my way to the computer department. But it was, I've always been myself. I've never ever had a problem dressing the way that I dress, which is, I've never worn a pair of heels in my life. Something else funny, my sister said to a colleague, my sister's colleague, a fellow she works with, his wife is a teacher at one of the elementary schools that I service, and she said, oh, if you ever get a chance, go to room 24 and see Miss So-and-so. And so she had told that woman at the company Christmas party, by the way, when you meet my sister Jo, actually sometimes says my sibling Jo, which I really appreciate. When you meet my sibling Jo, she said, she's nothing like me at all. So like beware. Like, and then Em said, oh, she's the kind of person who sometimes goes to work in the clothes like she rolled out of bed in. That's me. That's me to a T. I just slept for 4 hours in this outfit, like, including the bra, if that gives you any idea. So I'm a very, very, very low maintenance, lowbrow, kind of slob of a person. And I make no apologies for it. And I am going to be this way likely until I die. And I'm very grateful to have a good job at this time in my life. You know, you hear me complain about my job a lot, but the fact that I can be myself is pretty precious. You know, my sister complains all the time. They had a dress code at work that included hose for women. Fucking hose for women up until the 90s. So, you know what? I can't complain. I really can't complain. Okay, the next part of the question was, any tips for anyone in my position? Well, I would say there are definitely there's a fork in this road, and the road is, how desperate are you for a job? I've been there. I know what it's like. I've bartended. I've done stupid things in the name of employment. I really have. I mean, when I started bartending, I was actually on welfare on that time in my life, if you can imagine that. I was as low could go, rolling pennies for milk. And, you know, I think they say, you know, when you girl it up or you wear a tight top or a low-cut top, you'll get more tips. Now, I never really went that far, but I did wear whatever I was wearing at that time in my life. And, you know, I understand the economics of life. You have to do what you have to do sometimes for work. And I begrudge nobody, whatever you need to do to get through the day and to feed yourself, of course. The other fork in the road is, you know, personal authenticity or whatever, and how important is that to you? And is that non-negotiable? At this point in my life, I say that that's non-negotiable for me. However, I'm gainfully employed. I'm sitting pretty. This is a luxury to be able to say that I can dress any way I want. I can shave my head tomorrow and still have a job and still be somewhat respected in the workplace. And again, because where I work, we have a pretty solid, not in my particular department, but the Board of Ed has a pretty solid equity policy where, you know, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying policy. There are others, LGBT teachers and teachers, there's LGBT, what do they call them? You know, the groups, the GSAs, they're all through the high schools. Every high school has one. Actually, my colleague, one of my friends got a job at the board. She's a school secretary, a high school secretary, and she was Queer of the Year in Hamilton. Yeah, I've introduced her before in a previous video. Lila. She wouldn't come on video, but Lila is my friend. And she's big on the GSA committee in her own school, and she's just the school secretary, but she's very big in the queer community, very out and proud lesbian. And that's totally not only tolerated, but embraced. So you can talk openly about who you are. The director of education where I work is a gay man, and he has a picture of him and his husband on his desk, if you can imagine such a thing. And so, although, like I said, in my department, it's not necessarily tolerant all the time. I've mentioned this in previous videos. I work very hard to be authentic, you know, draw attention to the fact that we're all not all the same, and, you know, you can't treat me differently just because you don't get it. I'll explain it to you if you don't get it. So thanks to the viewer who called that in. And next week we've got an excellent topic coming up. We've already got it. I'm pretty excited about next week too. So see you guys later. Have a great week.